So, I am honored to introduce Loudoun County, Virginia, Supervisor Mike Turner, and thank him for joining us today. Supervisor Turner was first elected in November of 2019, re-elected in 2023. He serves as the Vice Chair of the Board of Supervisors Transportation and Land Use Committee and represents Loudoun on the National Capital Region Transportation Planning Board and is currently serving as Chair of the National Association of Counties Energy, Environment, Land Use Steering Committee. This committee covers all matters pertaining to air, water, energy, and land use. Supervisor Turner is also the Chair of the Virginia Association of Counties Environment, Energy, and Land Use Committee, which covers environment, affordable and reliable electricity, renewable energy sources, energy efficiency, and land use. So as you can see, he is very busy, and which makes us even more thankful that you came down to see us today. We all know that data center and data center growth is an emerging issue that is directly impacting many of the local governments in the region. And so we thought having Supervisor Turner here to talk a little bit about their experiences and lessons learned would be useful. So with that, sir, welcome to the Triangle region.
Thank you, everybody. Okay. My legislative aide is a UNC grad, and she insisted that I start off by saying something disparaging about Duke. If she asks, please let her know that I fulfill that obligation. As your host said, I am the Vice Chair of the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors. We have 9 supervisors. It's a bipartisan board. We are very collegial. We get along just fine. We eat dinner together without throwing food. I mean, we're friends. We have the highest concentration of data centers on planet Earth. We have 200 data centers within 30 square miles, 5 by 6 miles square of eastern Loudoun County. We have 53 million square feet of data center on the ground. We have another 60 million square feet in the pipeline, though the vast majority of that will never get built. We have more data centers concentrated in eastern Loudoun County than the next 5 U.S. markets combined. What I'm going to tell you is the story of how we got to where we are, which began basically in the late 90s. And I'll walk you through that. I talk very fast. I want to try and get finished with about 20 minutes left to answer any questions that you have. And this slide presentation, it will overwhelm you. It looks very granular and very complicated. I'm going to gloss over quite a bit of it, just at the main points. Anything else? No, let's dive in. Let's get going. Okay, so in 1993, we updated our 1972 zoning. Oh, let me just lay out Loudoun County. It sounds pretty similar. We have 7 towns. We have a county, and then embedded in the county are 7 towns, a whole bunch of villages. The towns elect their own mayor and have their own town councils. We have, as a county, no authority over the individual towns other than as they interact with the county processes. And then the Board of Supervisors has a county administrator, Ken Hemstreet, who's phenomenal. And the entire county staff does not work for me, Mike Turner, or Phyllis Randall, the chair. They work for the board as a body. So the theme for us is ask, don't task. We can ask county staff for information. We cannot individually task county staff. That has to go through the county administrator. He works for us. He's a salaried employee. So we updated our 1972 zoning ordinance, and I'm trying to get everybody so you can see this. That became a revised 93 ordinance. Latter half of the 90s, really the beginning of the internet, metropolitan area exchange east was established in Loudoun County. Key point, we laid down a huge amount of underground fiber optic cable. That is key. That determines your latency rate, how fast you can move data point from point A to point Z. We have the fastest latency rates in the world. We did, and when I started this process. In 2000, our zoning administrator, we didn't change ordinance, our zoning administrator said, we think data centers are like office parks. So anywhere you can build an office park by right, which is six different parts of the land, you can build a data center by right. this becomes important about 10 years later. We'll show you why. Updated our general plan in 2001, we revised the zoning. The general plan is our vision for what land should look like in Loudoun County. The zoning ordinance is the legal backing that should support that plan. So we updated the plan in 2001, we updated the zoning ordinance in 2003. That was the first mention of data centers in Loudoun County in the zoning ordinance. 2008, our director of economic development, Buddy Reiser, who is known worldwide. I'm not kidding you, go to Beijing, China, and mention Buddy Reiser's name, and they would know who he is. He's referred throughout the data center industry as the godfather of data center out. And he's a fantastic guy and was brilliant. He started aggressively marketing our underground fiber optic cable, bringing the data centers down, and they came in droves. 2014, we passed a zoning ordinance amendment. For the first time, we restricted data centers for site setback and sound. That's the first one we established performance standards. And then the general plan was finally updated. I won't go into the details of why it took 18 years to update the plan. It should be every 5 years, but in 2019, we updated our general plan. In 2022, so we updated our general plan in 2019. Of course, it takes about 2 years. What happened in 2020? COVID. So we updated our general land use plan and then got hit with COVID, and we didn't end up updating our zoning ordinance until 2023, 4 years later. So there was a gap of 4 years where our vision for land use did not match our zoning ordinance. And the data centers saw that gap and took very good advantage. 2022 was the first time PJM and the Northeast Power Authority came out in the meeting and said, oh, you know that 5-year integrated resource plan you just submitted that says you're going to need $65 million in infrastructure? You're off by a factor of 10. You're actually going to need $650 million in infrastructure. PJM immediately called out all the data centers and said, you're cut off on power. You have what you have now, we're trying to get it more. They are still constrained. That happened in 2022 in the summer. They are still constrained. They signed an electricity service agreement with Dominion Energy when they opened their doors and said, we're going to need 100 megawatts, 200 megawatts of power. Dominion, in a regulated state like a regulated commonwealth that we are in Virginia, the utility company has to, by law, provide power to all consumers. That's how they get to be a monopoly. They're a regulated monopoly, but they must provide power to everybody. And all of a sudden, they have to tell the data centers, all those electricity service agreements you sign, you can't have all that power that you signed up for. We'll let you know when you can have it all. They still can't have it all. Okay, so that was the first time the power constraints came. Summer 2022, I was the Transportation Land Use Committee chair. What we had started to discern was that data centers had figured out they were running out of land in industrial areas, and they started to quietly land bank all of those 6 parcels that allowed office parks by right, so they could build data centers by right. The difference with an office park, which is generally 1, possibly 1.5 stories, and likes to nestle down in residential neighborhoods, is that data centers are 18 city blocks long, 100 feet high, with gray concrete walls, and that's not what you want inside your residential neighborhoods. But that's what started happening. So I asked as part of my case, I said, let's make a map, let's find out where they can go, where we don't want them, where we do want them, and figure out a way that we can constrain this. And then, literally, a week after the next committee meetings, when Dominion told, or PJM told Dominion, you don't have enough power, you're going to have to build more infrastructure. In 2024, I'm going with big points here. 2024 was the first time the board denied a request for a 2.9 million square foot. Is that a question?
And you may, if you cover this later, just tell me. I have a question about the water usage because just a couple weeks ago in NARC, we were told that data centers return more water than they use, which boggles the mind.
That's not true anymore.
Thank you. I wanted you to address the water.
We'll go there on water later on. That is a changing process. We have not used a lot of water in Loudoun County, but AI uses.
Okay.
So 2024 was the first time we denied a request for 2.9 million square foot data center, 650 megawatts. They said, fine, we'll just build 1.3 million square feet, which we're allowed by right to build, and we'll add on these environmental things. We said, okay, you can build your 1.3. When I first got elected office in 2019, I had 0 data centers in my district, Ashburn district. I now have 4. All of them are hyperscales, and all of them are by right. I have no vote on any of the 4 that are in my district. And then on 2024, the Joint Legislative Audit Review Commission from the General Assembly said it is going to be very difficult to provide enough power to our data centers in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And then in 2025, on March 18th, last year, I had submitted a motion about 9 months prior to end by right data centers in Loudoun County. That's on March 18th. Every data center that's built in Loudoun County now, it's a new data center, must come to the Board of Supervisors. These numbers are old. I just got the updated numbers. I want to say that the number is not 895 million in data center revenue for Loudoun County. I think it's now 1.3 million. I think our current budget. And our operating budget is about 9% of our operating budget. So we've got a $4 billion budget, but the actual run the county every day is about the data center revenue probably pays for about 85 to 90% of that operating budget. Data center costs the county about 4 cents for every $1 tax revenue, whereas a normal business costs us about 25 cents for every dollar of tax revenue, and a house is usually break even. You can ask your profits, but it's usually break even. They don't put cars on the roads, they don't put kids in our schools. Land use challenges, explosive growth. I did this slide presentation 2.5 years ago. So everything I have updated fine tuning points in this presentation, but this presentation is 2.5 years old. So think about where we were and where you were in your own thinking about data centers 2.5 years ago and what I wrote down. And it's gratifying to me. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer. I'm an elected supervisor. I got an Air Force career, so I have some technical knowledge, but I'm not a specialist in data centers and energy. But if you do the digging and you build your facts, then some things become pretty obvious. I will say, and I should have said at the top end, in this discussion, and I've said this, I say it to audiences all the time, there are no good guys and bad guys in this discussion. This is an industry that is faced with a California gold rush worldwide that they're trying to cope with the best they can. I like the data center gang. I like working with them. They're smart, they're sharp, and they're trying to do their job in a very demanding market environment. Utilities are trying to provide power like they always have. Consumers are getting tired of having data centers built in their backyards. And oh, by the way, the whole decarbonization effort, the whole let's get off of fossil fuels effort is being really pressed down and discouraged now because the demand for energy is so high. Our numbers last year for global warming were the worst in history. We went up 1.55 degrees centigrade. The cutoff was supposed to be 1.5 for the Paris Accords, so we are backing up. And that's accelerating backing up and the pieces of the data center. Voracious appetite for land. When I did this, land that did not take a data center sold for $200,000 to $300,000 an acre in Loudoun County, and land that did take a data center sold for $2 to $3 million an acre. We just closed a land deal a couple of months ago in Loudoun County, and the developer paid $6 million an acre for the land because it accepts data centers. And that's knowing that the Board of Supervisors now must approve every application. We've more than doubled our population in the last 20 years. We've been the fastest growing county in Virginia for 20 years. We've been one of the 15 or 20 fastest growing counties in the United States for 15 or 20 years. Coupled together with enormous growth in population, with data centers growing as they have grown in Loudoun County, and there is a competition for land. There's a competition for resources. It is a very, very complex problem that is very, very challenging. So the reason I put this presentation together is 2.5 years ago on my birthday, November 13th, 2023, the Virginia Association of Counties said, hey, can you come down and do a presentation on data centers? Sure. I took 4 or 5 days, threw some slides together. First part of this presentation is these slides. And I ended with what I call the red arrow slide. You'll see it in a second. And I said, okay, this is where we are. And it was a standing room only crowd, and they left. And afterwards, I went back to Loudoun, and I got to thinking, I'm an elected official, and I know what's coming. I know how we got here, and I now understand what's coming. I owe it to do more research for my constituents in Loudoun County to figure out how do we get through this mess? What's going to happen? And I started digging and writing what would evolve is a 40-page white paper. The 2 QR codes, I'll end on the QR codes. I have a resource page. It's my county website where my face is. But if you go there and you get the full white paper, you get this full slide presentation. This is an abbreviated version. And I have now, I'll go over these, a one-pager, 15 best practices for communities considering data centers. And it distills down every lesson, all the big lessons learned from Loudoun County over the last 20 years in the evolution of data center growth. I'll go over those here and we'll finish up. So the final point on that is, you will think, I think, as we go through this, I'm an advocate for this energy source, for this on-site power, for this. I'm not. I believe that the facts are driving us to a certain foregone conclusion because it's just physically not possible to go in any other direction. I believe the data center community is going to go on-site power. I believe the data center community is going to go very small off of that. I believe long-term battery energy storage is going to be a feature. I believe virtual power plants and distributed energy networks is where the national grid is going to go. I'm a political science major, I'm not an engineer, like I said, but if you look at what the facts are on the ground, it's a pretty obvious conclusion for you to draw. So, here's our slide. Exponential increase in demand for data is driving an exponential increase in demand for energy. That's offset somewhat by improvements, so reconductoring overhead transmission lines can increase capacity of those lines, yes, grid enhancement technology, yes, can improve the amount of power that they can transmit. That's leading to a reduced urgency to meet the nation's climate goals, which is leading in turn to increased community resistance for more data centers and more power lines. This is reality of Loudoun County. These are just some of the numbers. I haven't, that's pretty updated. 119% increase in the amount of square footage. I just told you we're now sitting at 53 million. Between last year and this year, we've gone up 6 million square feet. Power, we were using 1 gigawatt of power in 2018. Loudoun County's data centers only right now is using 5.33 gigawatts of power in eastern Loudoun County. If you straight line extrapolate that out, my projection was we're going to need 11.43 gigawatts of power in Loudoun County by 2029. Kimberly Horn did independent analysis. Their number that they came up with, and I didn't even know they were analyzing this, they got 11.56. So we're going to need 11.5 gigawatts by 2029. Wait for the shoe to drop. That was before AI. That was a straight line projection of the last 5 years before AI hit. Yes, sir.
So I've been having this question stirring my head, and also just having an interplay on social media with friends about data centers, and really folks believing that the data centers are all about AI. But do people in Loudoun County and just in general, I mean, every time you binge watch something on Netflix and you want it to be HD quality, is feeding stuff from data centers. Every time we load something into the cloud or we use Google Docs, I mean, are people understanding that their personal technology use is contributing to this? Because especially during COVID and Zoom, that was using tremendous amounts of data and power.
They said in one of my presentations, I guarantee you they know that their personal behavior was driving the My favorite saying is, do not complain to me about data centers on your cell phone. And they get it. They understand that. But, okay, everybody want to help the data center problem? All of you turn in your cell phones before you leave today, okay? You're giving up your cell phones. No one's going to do that. No one's going to do that. So that's why I say you are driven to certain conclusions about what has to happen. We're going to talk about some of those iterative changes here going forward. So as I said, that's before AI. Take AI, normal load for a data rack inside a 48 rack cabinet. When I started this 2.5 years ago, that 10 to 40 kilowatts per rack. It's now, I think, in the neighborhood of 100 kilowatts per rack, and I have heard data center experts saying they are going to 1 megawatt per rack. That's how fast this demand for power is exploding. Through this, climate change impact we talked about. This is a JLARC study I mentioned, and it's saying you can't build your way out of this. It's a formal General Assembly commission that is telling our General Assembly, which is in session right now, you can't build your way out of this. Even if you cut demand in half, it would still be difficult to build your way out of this. This is okay. I'm gonna give you a test at the end of this. I want you to learn all this. Bottom line is we got 9.3 gigawatts of power coming in Loudoun County. I told you we're going to need 11.5 by 2029. They're already planning 3 more 500 kilovolt transmission. That first of all, that will increase the total to about 15 gigawatts by 2028. But that comes down the main trunk line down the center of Loudoun County. It doesn't get it out to Data Center Alley. Right now, they're building 3 lines, 1, 2, 3. They're a 500, 230 combination, which is total of about 2.85 gigawatts to get out there. We're using 5.33 right now. That'll get another 2.85 out there. By the time those lines are finished, it will not be even close to being enough. That's just the reality of power in Loudoun County.
What's the equivalent in terms of homes and gigawatts? Like if I was trying to conceptualize that many.
I learned that number a half dozen times and I always forget it. I want to say a gigawatt is about 100,000.
Oh, well, so a home is an efficient home is about 1 kilowatt. So 1 gigawatt would be 1 million.
Yeah. Okay.
But then,
million.
10.
It's a lot.
You're using 10 kilowatts at your house.
Yeah, it is around 1,900,000 homes. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm well. So that's what it is. I'm sure I'll get it again. Solar. I tell everybody this. Do not ever construct a sentence that uses data center, solar, and wind in the same sentence. Ever. You know what's stupid? It takes 5 acres of solar to produce 1 megawatt.
Yep.
The capacity factor, which we'll talk about here in a second, and the planning factor is usually 5 to 10, so most people use 7. I'm being generous. I say 5 acres per megawatt. But it only has a capacity factor of 23.9, meaning you only get that power a quarter of the time over the span of a year. So the numbers here, if you look at it, it would take 400,000 acres of solar panels with a nominal size of our data centers of 100 megawatts. 400,000 acres of solar panels in Loudoun County. All of Loudoun County is 333,000. But take a look at wind. Everybody is raving about the wind farm off about Martha's Vineyard, okay? They've got 62 wind turbines. They're going to generate 806 megawatts of electricity with a capacity factor of 34%. Their average generation is about 276 megawatts per hour. And that's enough to power 400,000 homes and about 2 small County data centers. That's why you don't call solar and wind data centers. First assessment, our grid is oversubscribed and is likely going to get worse. Halting new data center construction will slow but not solve the problem because of AI. Everybody is retrofitting the AI GPU chips, and they use way more energy. The rapid increase in power demand is going to result in the decommissioning, a slowing of the decommissioning of fossil fuel plants. We already see that happening across PJM's grid. Community resistance is going through the roof. A 135-year-old paradigm of generating power in massive power plants and then transmitting it hundreds of miles over transmission lines to the end user, I believe is an archaic model. We have to move to a distributed energy network, and we have to move to on-site power. So let's talk about that. Oh, these are the 3 scenarios. I believe these are going to be the 3 iterative scenarios that are going to be persistent for as far forward as we can look. Number 1, the power companies are going to say you're not getting any more power. You better learn to operate with what you have because you're not getting any more. So they're going to start limit data centers. That has already happened in Loudoun County. The last year, it normally took 3 to 4 years to get maximum power on your electricity service agreement. They came out last year and said now it's going to take 4 to 7 years. I have talked to data center companies and tell me why you're going to spend millions, possibly billions of dollars to build a data center and when you may not have power for 7 years. They smile and they go, because Dominion has always figured it out. They'll figure this out and we want to be ready when they do. Okay. Scenario number 2, technological breakthrough. You saw this with the DeepSeek Chinese chip that came out and used a whole bunch less power theoretically. I don't know if that's ever been proven. They use a whole bunch less power. So you use less power for your chips. But Javon's paradox says any resource used more efficiently will result in more of that resource being used. A data center, a 200 megawatt data center representative in the JLARC study said, look, we got 48 racks in a data cabinet. So we develop these new chips and we only need 2 racks to process the same amount of data. What do you think we're going to do with the other 46 empty racks? We're going to fill them up with a new chip. So we're going to end up in a 200 megawatt data center. So that's going to go up and down. They're going to continue to find technological breakthroughs, and that leads to the last one, which is they're going to have to go to on-site power. They're going to have to start developing microgrids. So what's a microgrid? Oh, wait, these are my terms, the big, hairy, audacious goals. Dominion is already reconductoring the lines, the transmission lines. All of your power lines. How many people could possibly have data center come to that neighborhood in the next 2 or 3 years?
Everybody.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Okay. You should get your utility to reconduct all the lines. Dominion has reconducted from ACSR, aluminum conductor, steel reinforced, which is this. And you can see the spaces in between to aluminum conductor, steel supported. And they create this sort of tetrahedral shape, heaping shape with no space in between. Increases capacity on the line by about 50%. Dominion has reconducted all lines in Loudoun County. If they're doing record rebuilds and reconducting all lines. That's our goal.
Have you had, I'm sorry to interrupt, have you heard any ideas of a difference of cost to produce such a line? The cost to produce the old versus what you're looking toward?
I have heard that's expensive to reconductor and do that.
Right.
The next step up is ACCC, aluminum conductor composite core.
Mm-hmm.
Way more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
They also sag in cold weather. Maybe not a bigger problem here, but up in Loudoun it is. And so it's very, very, very expensive. Now, it'll increase capacity by 100%, but so they may go to that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
My BHAG, big hairy audacious goal, you can transmit 2 gigawatts of high voltage DC power in a trench that's 5 feet deep that's covered over with bushes. You could build an entire high voltage DC network separately for data centers. They can operate internally on DC power all day long. And you could build an entirely separate high voltage DC grid, bury it in the existing rights of way, so no one would object to it. And you could power your entire data center sector on high voltage, on DC. Dominion has told me we don't have a way yet technologically to step it down from 765 kilovolts of high voltage DC to what they need inside the building. I don't believe that. I think they're going to figure it out. The beauty is it gets the data center completely off the residential grid. And it stops overhead power lines. So it's fine, yes, I'm over to okay, this is words. Department of Defense has said for all the major installations, you better go to internal power, on-site power. Housing Air Force Base has signed a contract with OPO, which has a sodium fast reactor to build a sodium fast reactor at Housing Air Force Base, where, by the way, I used to fly.
That's what.
Okay, what's a microgrid? 5 pieces of a microgrid. Large power consumer, on-site power source, backup system, a regional grid connection so you can demand response when you've got power to upload to the grid, or you need power to download from the grid, and a long duration energy storage system of some kind. It's known as battery energy storage system. Don't think lithium-ion batteries. I think that I store long duration storage is going to have to be. So what are the possible on-site power sources? Diesel backup generators. Every data center uses diesel backup generators for emergencies. They have a 5.9 reliability. That means they must be able to process data 99.999% of the time. That's their standard. That's why they always have diesel backup generators. State of the art is a tier 4 diesel generator. It's quieter, it's more expensive, but it's quieter, and it produces much, much less emissions. 95% of the nitrogen oxide is removed, but it still produces carbon, CO2, and particulate matter. No sulfur dioxide. So tier 4 should be the standard. We are changing our performance standards so that if you build a data center in Loudoun County, you have to have a tier 4 backup generator. Natural gas, the most effective way to translate natural gas into power, on-site power, is natural gas turbines, the ones we have in Loudoun County, which got built without our knowledge. We didn't find out about it until a year after they were operating. The Solar Titan 130 natural gas turbine with selective catalytic reduction units attached to filter out emissions. It's about Tier 4 standard clean. It's not, but it is noisy, and they have been operating for over a year now, 100 megawatt data center, completely off the grid. We didn't know about it because of the way they applied for the permit. I can get into the details of that if you want to. Battery energy storage systems. I have up here graphene. I actually worked for 3 months with a company that supposedly was building graphene long duration storage units. They have now since decided they can't do that, and so they're looking at another long duration storage. There are options out there. Lithium iron phosphate batteries. Lithium ion batteries have a major fire hazard, and they only operate one time a day, and they can only operate for 4 hours, and they can only discharge 80% of their power. Very inefficient. I think they're going the way of the dinosaur, like I said. There'll be other systems out there soon. If you're going to use a gas turbine, use selected catalytic reductions attached to it. We talked about energy storage.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Of the data centers in Loudoun County now, how many would you estimate use the Tier 4?
Of the 200 data centers that we have, if there's 10, I would be surprised.
So they've chosen. to
Everybody's
use-
on Tier 2. And this is something you can take away here.
Yeah.
The data center by necessity, data center community by necessity is following the path of least resistance. They have to respond to the marketplace. The marketplace says, we don't want perfect, we want good. We want you to be able to produce what we're asking for 99.99% of the time, but we don't want you waiting around for a year to figure out the perfect answer. If you got an 85% solution right now, let's implement it and get going. Path of least resistance, and that has implications for communities. I'll tell you about here in a second as we get into this. Hydrogen fuel cells. Green hydrogen fuel cells, what happens is the green is you use solar power, you get water. Through electrolysis, you strip off the hydrogen molecule, the oxygen molecule, you introduce hydrogen across an anode, the oxygen across a cathode, they meet on a catalyst, and the meeting there and rejoin and form water as the effluent and generates electricity. That's a green hydrogen fuel cell. No emissions, no noise, pretty cool. But you got to do the electrolysis by solar, and you're back to the solar problem. Blue hydrogen. Anytime you hear blue hydrogen, somebody's raving about blue hydrogen. Bloom Energy is the current large leading market provider of blue hydrogen. Sounds wonderful, sounds clean. It ain't. What they have to do is introduce the hydrogen and the oxygen by reforming methane. So you have a natural gas pipeline comes into your site. They reform the methane, they strip out the hydrogen, they strip out the oxygen, they dump the CO2 into the air. They will tell you, oh no, we're going to do carbon sequestration. There's only one place in the United States that does it. It has not even remotely been proven yet. So the CO2 gets dumped into the air and the raw methane leaks into the air. At the site, at the blue hydrogen fuel cell, no noise, no emissions, looks really clean. But upstream, where they're reforming the methane, it's really dirty. So that's blue hydrogen. Gray hydrogen is just basically just natural gas. Okay, so right now with the technology we have, what do we have that can deliver data center base load power on site? It's only one technology, natural gas turbines. And that is the company in our Loudoun County that we think they paid $1 billion for a land lease in Sterling. And a week after they paid that $1 billion land lease, Dominion called up and said, gosh, we're awfully sorry, but you're not going to have any power for 3 years. So they said, what are we going to do? They're sitting on a natural gas pipeline. They did their homework. They characterized the 8 natural gas turbines they're using as backup power, as alternative power on their permit. I don't think they did it deliberately manipulated my things. I think they genuinely believe we're going to do this. Dominion will give us our power when we look up to the grid. It never happened. The Department of Environmental Quality of Virginia and the EPA said, okay, backup power, that's okay. And so they started operating in island mode on these 8 natural gas turbines. The board didn't find out until my chief of staff and I did a site survey, and we're looking at these gas turbines running 24/7, 365. That's the only baseload power source you have right now. None of these other sources except this one right here can deliver on-site baseload power. And here's why. This is the concept of capacity factor. There are 8,760 hours in a year. If you have a 100 megawatt power source and it delivers 100 megawatts, 8,760 hours a year, that's 100% capacity factor. If it delivers 100 megawatts, but only 4,380 hours a year, half that time, that's a 50% capacity factor. Or if it delivers an average of 50 megawatts for all 8,360 hours, 70 hours, 60 hours, I can't remember, a year, then that's a 50% capacity factor. Capacity factor of solar is 23.4%. That's the problem with solar. It's not dispatchable. Dispatchable means you can turn on a switch any time of the day or night, you've got total max power. Can't do that with solar. You can't do it with wind, which is 34%. Hydroelectric, 34.5%. Geothermal is an interesting new, things are starting to pioneer that and make geothermal more possible. That's a 65% capacity factor, which is pretty good. Now, gas is 59.7, but that is at the generation point. If you have natural gas turbines on your site and you have a natural gas supply, you can throw the switch anytime you want. That's going to be up in the high 90s for capacity factor on site for that delivery model. And you can see nuclear, 92.3%. Doesn't produce any carbon dioxide, doesn't have any noise, doesn't have emissions. It's basically a green source, and it can operate forever. These are the local best practices. This is when you go to the QR code, you go to the resource page, look for the best practices, download, and this is on there. I should put it out there because I'd be crazy not to. I'm running for the National Association of County Second Vice President right now. I'm going to have a booth at the Legislative Conference in DC this weekend. I will have this paper to hand out if anybody wants it, and you can go to the QR code anytime you want to and download this. Make sure your comprehensive plan lines up with your zoning ordinance. Always. Don't let them get out of sync. Never allow by right data center development. You as the elected official need to see every data center is going to get built in your community. Require tier 4 backup generators. My noise threshold based on walking around with a sound meter and listening to noise, you should hold them to 55 decibels at the sending property line. Right now, Loudoun County is 65 decibels at the receiving property line. 55 at the sending property line is pretty good. It's pretty restrictive. They can do it. They have the technology. They can do it. Conduct post-construction professional noise study and make sure you measure dBA, which is oral noise, and dBc, which is low frequency hum. We have a lot of complaints about low frequency hum. So you need to check both when you go in with a pre and post noise study. If natural gas turbines are used, make sure you use selective catalytic reduction. Long duration energy storage should be other than lithium ion batteries. A minimum of 500-foot setback from residential. 1,000 is better. I got a call from Minnesota last year. They said, we're about to have a vote. There's a data center coming to town. It's going to be a 750 megawatt data center. They want to build it on an abandoned golf course surrounded on 3 sides by residential neighborhoods. I said, don't do it. And he said, yeah, but they're going to give us $3 million a year. And I said, is that your tax portion? No, they're just going to give us a flat $3 million a year. And I said, $3 million is rounding error. They spend $3 million on lunch every day. Don't sell yourself short and don't build it surrounded on 3 sides by residential neighborhoods. That was Thursday, Tuesday, they voted.
Wow.
We talked about reconductoring, the underground HVDC. If you talk high voltage DC grid to the power companies, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. But remember, this is my turn to prepare the Regulatory initiative, the new rating is more comprehensive than these, GDI. And then you get the utilities to state in writing where the power is going to go. So the 6 key factors, really quickly, I want to emphasize. That's why they're at the top. Okay? So, actually, I need to change this. Is sound, setback, site, what does it look like? Power, water, emissions. So your point on water. Our data centers started out using water. They realized they could do it cheaper. They could cool cheaper on ceiling mounted air fans. So they went to fans. In the last year or two, with the advent of AI uses enormous amounts of power. And the only way to realistically efficiently cool those racks is with water. So Submerged, the company that's designed Submerged rack, is headquartered in Loudoun County. The whole industry is talking about Submerged racks. Here's the thing, excuse me. The thing with water is they'll use water in a closed loop and they'll tell you, it's no problem. We're going to use a lot of water to charge the system the first time, but then it's a closed loop. Okay, what we're finding now just recently is, yeah, that works for a year or two. And in that loop, they pick up heavy metals, PFAS, PFOA. And at the end of that 2 years, they got to flush that water. Where's it go? I don't know. Yet another frontier problem that we haven't solved yet, but the data center companies are trying to grapple with. And I think that's my last slide. It is. So that QR code will take you right to my white paper. That QR code will take you to the resource page, which has a white paper, this full slide presentation, and the 15 best practices sheet. And with that, I am done. I'm happy to take questions.